I've written 3 novels, and they all are in compressed periods of time. The Lost Letters from Martha's Vineyard was a real departure for me because it is a dual timeline story. So it's set in 1959 and it's set in 2018. And it is the story of an actress who's sort of up and coming, and she's, about to hit it big, and she's been nominated for a supporting actress Oscar, and that kind of thing. And then she vanishes overnight, never to be heard from again. And then the story flashes to 2018, and this is all in the beginning of the book. And this woman is packing up her grandmother's house and figures out that her grandmother, who raised her and her sister, was in fact this actress. And she's like, WTF, like, grandma, like, what happened? And she goes on this journey to try to find out what happened that summer. And then the story flashes back and you find out what happened that summer. And that's sort of the sort of duality of the novel. It goes back and forth between the two women, between Mercy Wells in 1959 and Kit O'Neill in 2018. And I started this story because, again, there's always a nugget of something that sparks it for me. And in this case, I'm a big fan of American melodrama from the mid-century. I watch a lot of those. And my first story for Vanity Fair was about the history of Peyton Place, which was the first great dirty book ever written. And the woman who played a supporting part in that film, her name was Diane Varsi, and she had disappeared. She was on the cusp. She had been nominated for an Oscar, and then boom-o, she just gave it all up and vanished. And she moved to Vermont. Now, she didn't vanish like completely, like where people had no idea where she was. She just gave up Hollywood and walked away from it all. But I thought, well, what if she had vanished? What if nobody knew what happened to her? You know what I mean? And then what if you years later found out that she was like your mom? And it freaked you out. Like, that was sort of the kernel of the story. And then, it's like Play-Doh, right? You mash it and you this and that, and you leave this, you add this and that kind of thing. And that's how the story came together. But I had no idea at the time how difficult it was going to be to write a dual timeline novel. I've read them, but I mean, the problem is you've got to pace them together so that they meet at the end. And I kept getting the pacing wrong and then going off and having to go back and fix it. And it was just tremendously challenging. And I did almost give it up several times. And in fact, had basically decided to abandon it. But HarperCollins had right of first refusal of all my new work. And so I had a third of it done. I called Jane, my agent, and I said, okay, can we send this in with the outline? And I think they're going to pass on this because it's a mess. And then I could decide what to do with it, if anything. She said, okay. So she sends it in. 2 weeks later, calls me back. She's like, they're bidding. And I was like, well, I assumed that it was like $300. They were like something terrible. So she gives me the number, and I was like, well, we should probably take that. And she's like, oh, you're taking it. Start writing. And she hung up the phone. And so then I was like, well, I got to finish this. So I immediately formed a writing group and got cracking. You have to know what elements you're going to, what, sort of mic drops, so to speak, that you have left and what twists you have to offer. You have to give enough breadcrumbs so that people don't feel like the butler did it, but you also can't give it away so that it's too easy. And it is really tough. This is a romantic mystery, the Martha's Vineyard book. And my first book was mainly, it was like a very glossy melodrama. It was not a mystery at all. And then the second one was more of a suspense book, but again, not a mystery, so to speak, more of like a suspense galloping yarn. And this sort of drifted into the mystery thing. That was not the original intent. It was going to be more, it started out more of a character study of like what this does to you to find out that this person you loved, you thought you knew, was in fact somebody else completely, which is still a core part of it. But I just thought, this is not enough to sustain this. I just knew it. I just thought, no, I mean, it's interesting, but it's not that interesting. So I thought, I need more juice here. I need more surprise. And I thought, well, how could I zhuzh it up to give it more surprise? And so I just started to say, well, what if we did this? And I tried all sorts of things. And some of them worked, and then some of them I took out. The funny thing is that I got a good way, like a quarter way through the book, when I came up with a really good twist, but it would mean I'd have to start over. And then I called a friend of mine who's a novelist, and I said, all right, here's what I've got, but here's the twist. do I have to do this? And she said to me, I think you know you have to do this. So I did. I had to start over. But I'm so glad I did. You know what I mean? Like, it was a tough, this is definitely the toughest book I've written, but it's also, I I objectively feel the strongest book I've written. The eras, that the research was all good, but how it manifested, how the secrets were dropped and what secrets people were keeping, and how all that played out was completely different than the original. I think one of the things I love about writing about mid-century America, people are like, why are you always writing about this era? And I'm like, look, there's a lot wrong in America in mid-century, in terms of human rights and things like that, and equality, and but there was a lot right too. I mean, people knew how to dress, people knew how to dance, people knew, like, there was a certain style and panache. You look at movies, those old Rock Hudson, Jane Wyman, Doug Sirk, Mark Robeson movies from mid-century. I mean, there's just a certain je ne sais quoi about it all that I love, and uh, I think for me, the sort of essence of it is that I want to live there, you know? I mean, I want to stay there. And I think you have to write about an era that you want to live in, that you really want to spend time in, because you are it's immersive, you know what I mean? And the fact that in terms of the letters, like, you didn't have cell phones. You didn't have, I mean, Mercy in my book, she doesn't even have a phone, because if you rented a cottage on Martha's Vineyard in 1959, you wouldn't have had a phone. It wouldn't have come with the rental. So the letters then were I mean, it was like, this is how you communicated. And it ends up lending drama to the story because, you know, there's misconnections, and there's, like, there's all sorts of mischievousness that goes along with the letters, and the letters were able to tell a story of themselves, about what's in somebody's head, because it's their unvarnished thought on the page, which was, I think, a really needed and key element to propelling the narrative forward.